Good morning. Happy Monday. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Grateful to have you here. If you're tuned in and watching us first thing live, we always appreciate the people who are joining us first thing live in the morning. If you're listening to us later, make sure that you tune in and join us, the Cantina crew over at YouTube, or our Rumblers over on Rumble, or Kick, or Spreely, or Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku. The dozen of channels that you can watch us live in the morning. We'd be grateful to have you join us. Comment, like, and subscribe. We appreciate you very much. Yes, we're ready to roll. We've got some big news stories today, starting at 7 a.m. here in just 7:03. We're going to talk about the removal of another statue in the state of New York. The statue of General Philip Schuyler was removed. We'll talk about who he was, why he was important, and why the left decided to take his statue down. Yeah, of course, it has something to do with slavery. We'll talk about that this morning in just a few minutes. After that, I want to play a clip for you of Senator Lindsey Graham being based for once. What? Yeah, no kidding, right? Well, don't be just so disappointed. I mean, every once in a while, it's nice to see Senator Lindsey Graham with a little fire in his belly in an interview that he did with George Stephanopoulos over the weekend, talking about the Donald Trump indictment. Lindsey Graham delivered a blistering critique of George Stephanopoulos' old boss, Bill Clinton, and of Hillary Clinton, and the double standards for justice set in this country. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then, of course, this morning, if you haven't read the bylines of the show already, I'll go ahead and lay it out for you. We're going to speak to Mark McCloskey. He is the AR-15 gun guy. Remember him? He was the one who got in trouble for pointing his AR-15 at Black Lives Matter protesters who had broken onto his private property. He's a lawyer. He's a good Missouri boy, so we'll talk to him this morning at 8 o'clock and get his lawyerly view on the indictment against Donald Trump for allegedly mishandling classified documents. I wonder who else might have been embroiled in a similar scandal. Maybe the current president of the United States? We'll hear from Mark McCloskey about that this morning at 8 a.m. Then if you missed my interview with former Libertarian Party vice presidential candidate Spike Cohen, I'll replay that interview for you this morning at 8:30. It's going to be a good one. It was a great interview, and I didn't want you guys to miss it if you had when we had Spike Cohen on last week. All right, let's talk about the news. A nearly century-old statue of the Revolutionary War hero General Philip Schuyler, who was also one of Albany's largest slave owners, was removed from outside of City Hall in the state capitol on Saturday morning. The removal cost about $40,000, according to News Channel 13 in Albany. And the 9-foot depiction of Schuyler, he was a New York senator and the father-in-law of Alexander Hamilton, may also contain a time capsule with maps, coins, and other knickknacks that were dating from its unveiling in 1925. Didn't even make it 100 years. Now, despite his prominence in early American history, Schuyler came under criticism after the death of George Floyd, of course, and the subsequent riots carried out by Black Lives Matter protesters and Antifa across the country in 2020. During his lifetime, Schuyler was one of the largest slave owners in the city of Albany. Now, the mayor, Kathy Sheehan, had ordered his removal in June of 2020 during the height of the unrest, but the project languished for years pending the results of an engineering study and raising the money for it as well. The removal follows this similar trend of iconic statues being torn down to satisfy progressive demands. In 2021, a 187-year-old statue of Thomas Jefferson was removed from City Hall. A year later, a towering equestrian likeness of Theodore Roosevelt was also hauled away from its longtime home at the Museum of Natural History. I'll just give you my take on this at the top. Actually, you know what? You're going to have to wait for my opinion because I think it's important for us to set it up. You may be wondering, Austin, why aren't you talking about the big news of the day, the Donald Trump indictment? We will get there. But quite frankly, I think that these stories are more cultural touchstones than even the Trump indictment story, which I see as sort of a fleeting come and go kind of a story. Whereas these things to me, I think are actual landmark moments in American history that are happening right now, and definitely not for the better. But let's learn a little bit about who the General Philip Schuyler was. He was an American military and political figure during the Revolutionary War. He was born in 1733 in Albany of New York, and he belonged to a wealthy and influential Dutch American family. He served as a major general in the Continental Army, and he played a vital role in organizing the Northern Campaign against the British. He was initially appointed to the position of Northern Department Commander and was responsible for defending New York and the Hudson River Valley, very key points during the American Revolution. Schuyler is best known for his efforts in fortifying Fort Ticonderoga and orchestrating the American retreat from Canada during the Saratoga campaign. Despite being replaced by General Horatio Gates just before the decisive Battle of Saratoga, Schuyler's strategic groundwork greatly contributed to the American victory. He was also a staunch advocate for the abolition of slavery and was instrumental in drafting legislation to gradually abolish slavery in New York. Boy, that doesn't really fit the narrative there, does it? But it reminds me very much of the sort of hypocrisy that we saw from figures like Thomas Jefferson, which I think, again, strange and fascinating. If you're tuning in this morning to the Wake Up America show right now, then we'd love to hear from you. You can text the show today at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Schuyler's daughter, Elizabeth, married Alexander Hamilton, who would later, of course, become the Treasury Secretary of the United States. After the war, Schuyler served as a U.S. Senator from New York and played a role in shaping the early government of the United States. Probably his greatest sin. Being the father-in-law to Alexander Hamilton, right? He passed away on November 18th, 1804 in Albany, New York, leaving behind a legacy as a military leader, politician, and advocate for social change. Buddy Mansour over in the live stream says Schuyler is a household name now thanks to Hamilton. Yeah, this is why I actually haven't seen Hamilton, and I probably won't go see Hamilton just because I don't really want to see the lionization of figures from American history that contributed so greatly to the modern decline. You'll note that in the Unabomber's manifesto, he doesn't place any blame on the Federalist Party of the founding of the United States, which is probably where a lot of our problems started. I mean, come on, boy, you really got to be a nerd to get that kind of a joke. So Schuyler's statue is removed, and Teddy Roosevelt's statue is removed. Thomas Jefferson's statue is removed. They're coming after George Washington. They're wanting to rename schools. Thomas Jefferson, they're trying to remove his statue and his name from the university that he founded, which, quite frankly, I find hateful and despicable. Now, here is my take on this. This is why I opposed the removal of Confederate statues in the first place, because I knew that this is not where it would end, that it would begin with Robert E. Lee in Richmond, Virginia, and that it would end with George Washington of Virginia. It's not to say that I think that those statues, those men deserve to be lionized. They don't. I'm not a Confederate sympathizer, despite sympathizing with some of the economic ideals that the Confederates had advanced in some of their speeches, and their reasons for secession, unfortunately, were intimately tied with chattel slavery, which I cannot endorse. And as a libertarian, I cannot abide. However, that is an intricately entwined part of American history, and therefore it deserves defending. And because on these cultural touchstone items, I believe that by ceding ground to the left on those issues, that if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And this is their very stated open and plain language. No matter whether it's the issue of cultural icons and iconography from the American South. One perfect example of this is the Everytown demand action for gun control. I'll never forget watching a rally, and this was back in 2018 when I was running for the U.S. Senate here in Missouri. During a speech at the Everytown for gun control rally, one of the young ladies got up on stage and says, "If you give us an inch, that bump stock ban, we will take a mile." And those are their actual stated plain language words. And of course, I used that in a campaign ad to attack current sitting Senator Josh Hawley, who was my primary opponent at the time, because he had came out in favor of the bump stock ban. And this is why I think that it's so important for us to fight back against Republicans for gun control, of which I read last week that apparently a majority of Texas Republicans support gun control. Very brief little tangent. The funny thing about Texas Republicans, everybody thinks Texas Republicans are so hardcore and so badass and so right wing, but they're really not. I mean, if anything, Missouri Republicans are what everybody thinks Texas Republicans are. Texas Republicans, they were way behind the ball when it came to COVID tyranny, mandatory masking, et cetera, et cetera. So, really disappointed with our Texas freedom fighters down there, quote in air quotes. If you're just texting into the show, you can text us, or if you're just tuning into the show, you can text us today at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586 for the show. What would you like to hear from us this morning? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the statue of General Philip Schuyler removed from the capital of New York, the Albany City Hall. He had stood outside of City Hall for almost 100 years. Didn't make it to 100 years, though. So only the person who helped us to win the American Revolution and to have the country that we live in today only helped lay the groundwork for the removal of slavery in the state of New York. But there you go. Chris Morrill says the Missouri GOP didn't exactly kick maximum ass in the last session. Honestly, I feel like they were probably just exhausted because the session before that was the redistricting one. They were all always at each other's throats. Good morning, Katie556 and European 10 beater. He says he got the notification early today. Good to see you. Good to see a bitchmobile, as well as cries of treason and Blutreich. Katie556 says, learn from the mistakes of the past and leave the statues. Just my 2 cents. I agree with you very much, Katie, and it's nice to see you here as well. European 10 beater is here with us over on Rumble. Nice to see so many Rumblers this morning. If you wouldn't mind doing me a favor, guys, I see if there's 22 people watching us over on Rumble, hit that like button so we can get up to 20 likes if we can. Looks like we've got about 8 so far. I don't know how many we have over on YouTube, but remember, just hitting those like buttons over there help us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. The Critical Heretic over on YouTube says that their race, gender, and legal theory is one theory. Change the definition of words in culture, then the law. Good point, Critical Heretic. Very true. That is the less strategy, and it's one that must be resisted, and we should fight it on all fronts. Postmodernism, Cultural Heretic, that is absolutely true. Chris Morrill, with his black-pilled take, says, sometimes I wish the Brits would have reinvaded in 1861 so both sides could lose. Okay, Chris. I know it's Monday, but must you be so dark? All right, let's talk about the news. Senator Lindsey Graham and ABC News' George Stephanopoulos got into a heated back and forth during a live interview on Sunday about the federal indictment against former President Donald Trump. Let's take a listen.
Allow classified information to get on a felon's computer, Anthony Weiner. You haven't even mentioned that. Most Republicans believe we live in a country where Hillary Clinton did very similar things and nothing happened to her. President Trump will have his day in court, but espionage charges are absolutely ridiculous. Whether you like Trump or not, he did not commit espionage. He did not disseminate, leak, or provide information to a foreign power or to a news organization to damage this country. He is not a spy. He's overcharged. Did he do things wrong? Yes, he may have. He will be tried about that, but Hillary Clinton wasn't. Your old boss committed perjury in a civil lawsuit.
Your old boss
lost his law license.
Your old boss, he's talking about Bill Clinton there. George Stephanopoulos, for those who don't know, who's interviewing Lindsey Graham, worked for a Bill Clinton in his election campaign. So when Lindsey Graham comes out there and says your old boss got indicted, you got to know George Stephanopoulos is sweating there, sweating bullets.
Obstructed justice in a dozen ways, and he didn't get prosecuted. I know.
And he was impeached. Well,
he was impeached. Yeah, he wasn't prosecuted. He was impeached. You know, impeachment means nothing. You can say, "Oh, I impeach you. I can impeach you right now." Chris Morrill, I impeach you. Critical Heretic, I impeach you. Katie556 on Rumble, you are impeached. Therefore, you are impeached. Can you believe it? You're impeached. There you go.
Senator, yeah, well, he was impeached, but he wasn't prosecuted.
You've made your point. What you.
Have you made your point, though? Have you made your point? Honestly, I didn't feel like he made his point there. I'm wondering what you think. You can text the show today again at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. 1586. If you're just tuning in right now to the Wake Up America show, make sure you smash that like button over on whichever stream you're watching us on today. We are streaming on about a dozen stations this morning, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on what the big news of the day is today. One listener actually just texted me in a story that says, AP, your show is great. Love what you and Steffi do each day. They're sending me a story from The Blaze about the Wuhan lab engineered dangerous mutant coronaviruses and worked with the Chinese military to develop bioweapons and pre-pandemic COVID vaccines, according to an eye-opening report. I will have to take a look at that on the commercial break. All right, when we get back, what have I got for you, Johnny? Oh, pull that up. There we go. Oh, yeah. Hate groups are always on the rise, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Wow, it's amazing how when your fundraising depends on it, how many hate groups just continue to pop up everywhere. We'll talk about that, and then we'll get into the legacy of the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. He hated modern society. So do a lot of people, apparently. They're calling him Uncle Ted. Was he a hero or was he a villain? We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Capitalism was built on stolen land, stolen labor, and stolen resources. And a check today could not undo the cumulative impact of generations of that stolen wealth in all of those categories. And so I think it has to come in the form of land, labor, and resources in an ongoing fashion. And there are structures that we have that could be flipped to begin to do that reparations. In fact, my opponent here mentioned 5 Points and the corridor and what has happened to our businesses there. Part of what has catalyzed that exponential decimation of Black businesses is the 5 Points bid, the business improvement district, which further steals from the community through taxation. And I think there's a model that could be redistributed. Instead of a bid collecting extra taxation from the Black and brown businesses that are struggling, you could be collecting those extra taxes from white-led businesses all over the city and redistributing them to Black and brown owned businesses who are not part of the bid or who are simply just Black or brown owned. And that's one way to give back in the business form fashion. I think when we talk about resources being returned, this is where consumer-owned or municipally owned.
Oh, God. There you go. That is Denver City Council member Candy Kidabaka, who is running for re-election. She says that white-owned businesses should be taxed extra and redistributed to Black-owned businesses. Good morning. Thanks for tuning into the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Make sure you smash that like button, help to support the channel, and subscribe if you aren't watching us just yet. Very briefly, before I get this segment started, I got to give a huge shout out to our buddy, John Rail. I think he deserves a big round of applause. I saw his post over on Facebook the other day about how much weight he has lost and how much he has improved his health in the last year. And I got to say, it's extremely impressive. John, we are big fans of your journey and seeing you go from zero to hero. I don't know how else to say that. You were never a zero, buddy. But seeing you go from 25 to 75, or whatever you want to call it, whatever measurement we might say, perhaps the number of pounds that you've lost. What was it, like 100 pounds or something? It was a lot. It has been very inspiring, John. Makes me want to get back on the horse again soon, which I definitely will be doing. Congratulations, John Rail. Let's give him another round of applause. You see, unlike the leftist community, we actually celebrate body positivity when people do positive things to their body, like getting out, working out, actually eating healthy, drinking water, doing something good for yourselves. Those are the kinds of things that we celebrate. And we don't just go out of our way and bully fat people, but we do say that it is a better thing for our bodies and for our lives if we take care of them. It's the only body that you got. And John, I have to say that you are definitely an inspiration. 95 pounds so far. Congratulations. We love to hear those stories, man. And we appreciate you very much. And a little bit later in the show, did you see that I've basically pissed off the entire country of France? Yeah. I know. As an American, you must be also upset. I posted a meme. There was a video of a Syrian migrant, I imagine, who stabbed a baby in a stroller in a park. Did you see this video? It was pretty messed up. So I posted a meme of the French when their pensions get cut a little. You know how they riot whenever there's something like that. And then the French when a guy with a knife starts stabbing kids, and they're all like, oh, and they're like not going to do anything about it. Anyways, so basically the entire country of France got angry at me. I don't know what the population of France is, but this meme got 3.9 million views, and man, they were attacking me. If I had been within baguette range, I would have been getting hit with baguettes. It was pretty funny. There were transgender activists in France calling me a homophobe and attacking me as a bigot and misogynist and sexist and homophobic and all this stuff. Pretty hilarious stuff. But it was great to see all the Americans coming to my defense and ripping on France. There was this one meme that this French guy attacked me with. I think he's a guy, but he's got the transgender flag, so you never know. He was attacking me, saying when the guy makes fun of France, all of them come to attack him and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, they came and attacked me, and then they immediately surrendered. And that one guy was trying. Chris Morrill says that one guy was trying to drag you hard, but then got some of his posts deleted. Yeah, there was some weird guy, and I think he's like an American conservative. He was like trying to drag me for losing my elections, and then he was like saying that, my mother who passed away when I was a child, he was like saying, oh, she's in hell and I'm glad she's there. I'm glad that your mother died because she hasn't lived to see like what you have become. And it was just kind of like, wow, this guy really, really, really hates me. And of course, people who talk like that are always these anonymous accounts. Like they never show who they really are, because people like that, they wouldn't want anyone to know what a disgusting piece of excrement that they are, so they don't speak about, they don't show their name or their faces in public. And yeah, I saw that a bunch of their tweets got deleted. I wonder why when you talk like that to people. But I didn't report his tweets. Just I've gotten such a thick skin these days. I mean, I've had people say the most hateful, horrible things about me in my life, that stuff like that just bounces off me. Yeah, that was pretty extra. It was. Anyways, so let's see. Story wise, I don't have a producer, so I got to look it up myself. Here we go. Yeah, I saw this story. This is worth a casual mention at least. So the Southern Poverty Lawsuit, they're the ones that call everybody a Nazi. The Southern Poverty Law Center is massively overcounting hate groups, and it's not just Moms for Liberty, which has made their list recently. The Southern Poverty Law Center's notorious hate map. Eventually, we're all going to be listed on the hate map. But the SPLC has just released their yearly report on hate groups in the U.S., a number that is always rising, which is amazing, right? Because their fundraising depends on it. But by adding Moms for Liberty, which is a conservative grassroots organization that bears little resemblance to the neo-Nazi groups that the SPLC has historically tracked, right? The 2022 report has managed to set a new record. Who would have thunk it, that we'd see all of a sudden we're just surrounded by hate groups? Everybody panic. Right, but the SPLC has gotten a lot of criticism from not just the conservative right, but the libertarian right as well, for maintaining that hate in America is always growing, right? Whether or not the ranks of the purportedly hateful are actually increasing at all, it doesn't matter, because their hate is always on the rise. Oh, and please send us $2,500 to our nonprofit that definitely won't go to build a beautiful Malibu beach house for the next Black Lives Matter grifter who comes along in order for us to steal our shit. You can text the show today with your thoughts at 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear from our listeners today. It's nice to see a nice big crowd over on Rumble this morning. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Love to see it. You love to see it. Make sure you're clicking that like button as you file in to watch the show this morning. It does take a lot of work to get that content out to you. And of course, I work almost entirely on my own with the backup of my beautiful smoking hot redheaded libertarian wife, Stephanie Peterson, who helps me to get products out the door from apforlibertyshop.com. Make sure you check that out if you haven't. But again, if you're not interested in giving me any money, but you like what I do over here, you can just click that like button, and that helps us to spread the message. Katie556 this morning says, we need to start a group that calls Southern Poverty Lawsuit as a hate group. Brilliant idea. Brilliant. The Critical Heretic says that the SPLC exclusively practices critical legal theory now, not civil rights law like they used to. Yeah, the ACLU has jumped on board that train as well. It's sad to see what they have become, because the ACLU used to be an actual civil liberties union, but they in no way support many of the things that they used to, including they're against free speech. It's just terribly disappointing. But I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Again, text the show today at 573-319-1586. But we all know that the SPLC is itself a hate group. And you can read more about that at reason.com, which has that headline story today. I'd like to move on to the big story today. Kevin Kono just started following us on Rumble. That's a big story. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you tuning in. The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, a.k.a. Uncle Ted, to a growing faction of people online who lionize him. He had committed suicide in prison over the weekend. Ted Kaczynski had previously tried to hang himself with his own underwear in the past. He's the infamous convict. He killed himself at the federal medical prison in North Carolina on Saturday. He had gone on a 17-year bombing spree that killed 3 people and injured 23 others before he was caught and sentenced to more than 4 life terms in May of 1998. Months before he even went to trial, Kaczynski actually tried to unalive himself after he failed in his bid to try and fire his lawyers. He actually appeared in court hours afterward with the red marks from the hanging attempt still around his neck. This is from a gentleman by the name of Lou Blanus. He says that the night before the court hearing in 1998, Kaczynski attempted to hang himself with his own underwear. Yeah, doesn't that sound familiar? We hear something like that from the Epstein people. You can text the show again today at 573-319-1586. It's good to see and hear from all of our friends over on Rumble today. We're grateful to have all of your likes and your comments over there. Right now, YouTube and Rumble are competing for the number of people watching, and it looks like YouTube is just barely beating them out. So it's nice to see the numbers really popping up high this morning. Look at you trying to start a war, says Jim DeGriz today. All right. So let's learn a little bit more about this. So I pulled up some research on Ted Kaczynski. He was born in 1942 in Chicago. His fascinating background on this guy. He earned degrees in mathematics and became a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, before he resigned abruptly in 1969. So consider that his views on industrial society, which he wrote in his manifesto, were developed during the 1950s and 60s. And it was during the 1950s and 60s that he developed his ideas about industrial society. I mean, comparing the 1950s and 60s to today, I know a lot of people today who think Uncle Ted was a hero. They call him Uncle Ted, not me. And I'll get to my opinion on him at the end of this segment. But a lot of people look at his writings on industrial society and today and say, wow, look, everything that he had to say came true. Well, is that the case? We're going to talk about that, as well as his views of liberals and conservatives. But let's get through his biography a little bit here, because what I found for myself, especially, and actually I reached out to a lot of people. I probably reached out to a dozen people to be interviewed about Ted Kaczynski. And pretty much everybody, I would say, either turned it down because they didn't know enough, or just said, I don't know much about him, or it's not my kind of topic. A lot of people avoided discussing this. So I said, well, I guess it's just going to be me and me alone. So it's just going to be a conversation between you and I about the Unabomber, who he was and what he believed. Now, Kaczynski began his bombing campaign. It lasted nearly 20 years, from 1978 to 1995, and he specifically targeted individuals that were involved in technology, specifically those that are associated with the advancement of modern industrial society. His attacks took place across the United States, primarily targeting universities and airlines. He sent homemade explosive devices through the mail, resulting in the deaths of 3 people and injuring several others. Now, the Unabomber moniker, like, where did he get his name from, right? It originated from the FBI's investigation into the case, which referred to him as the Unabomb suspect, which was an acronym for University an airline bomber. So eventually the media coined the term Unabomber based on that abbreviation. Now, Kaczynski's manifesto, which was titled Industrial Society and Its Future, or the Unabomber Manifesto, outlined his anti-technology ideology and his critiques of modern industrial society. Now, fascinating because consider that he did this before the proliferation of the internet. This is before Amazon.com. This is before, streaming live, and this is before cell phones, and this is before a lot of these technologies that we sort of blame for the downfall of society. A lot of people do before they even existed. And as brilliant as he was, and as much as a lot of people think that he could see the future, there's just no way that people could have seen exactly everything that was coming on, right? Because there's no such thing as telekinesis, or what do they call it? I'm not sure what they call that, just being psychic. There we go. Anyways, he outlined his anti-technology ideology and his critiques of industrial society. He believed that technological advancements led to the erosion of individual freedoms and the destruction of the natural world. Fascinating. In 1995, Kaczynski's brother recognized his writing style and turned him into the authorities, leading to his arrest in a remote cabin in Montana. Now, Ted Kaczynski faced a trial in 1998, and he ultimately pleaded guilty to all of the charges, and he received multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now, the explanations for his manifesto, I have gathered together basically a broad overview of some of the claims that he made in his manifesto, and we're going to go through some of these right now. The number one claim that was made in his manifesto is that Kaczynski argued that modern industrial technological society is inherently destructive and inherently dehumanizing. I think probably a lot of people would agree with that. Number two, in terms of the psychology of modern leftism, Kaczynski actually explores the psychological roots of leftism, suggesting that dissatisfaction and feelings of inferiority drive individuals towards radical ideologies. Another interesting point there, that dissatisfaction, feelings of inferiority drive individuals towards radical ideologies. Now, can we see something like that today in modern leftists, right? That they feel inferior. Well, many of them are inferior to a large degree, right? And they feel out of control of their own lives, and they see these forces swirling around them, and they have a desire to take control of them, and they feel as if they're being manipulated, and many of them are being manipulated, and many of them just turn into what we might call NPCs. Kaczynski suggests that people turn to these radical ideologies because of their feelings of inferiority, which I think it's not just that it drives them into radical leftist ideologies. I think that there's, that would explain why so many people turn to National Socialism and right-wing authoritarian ideologies as well, because of their feelings of inferiority. Right? And I think that's kind of like part of the reason of the worship of the hyper-masculine form, or people like Andrew Tate as well, rather than someone who, I won't say necessarily is more docile, but meets a masculine version of Americana from the 1950s that wasn't all roided up, and you weren't driving Lamborghinis. The typical stereotypical American male from the 1950s is not an Andrew Tate, right? He's not a pornographer and, driving Lamborghinis. He's driving a 1955 Ford pickup, and he has 2 kids, and he lives in a humble house in Detroit, and maybe, plays golf with his buddies. He's not 550 pounds like a lot of people are today, but he certainly doesn't kind of fit the sort of giga Chad hyper-masculine mold that a lot of right-wing authoritarians today believe in. And there's certainly not the 650 pound what would you call them? Androgynous land whales that the left lionizes today, right? These are those radical ideologies that he says that the feelings of dissociation and inferiority drive individuals into these radical ideologies. And when it comes to these feelings of inferiority, Ted Kaczynski's manifesto details that many leftists feel inferior due to societal norms and expectations, leading them to resent and seek to undermine the established order. Over socialization, right? Meaning too many people in too tight an area, too crowded, too packed in. and socializing with one another too much. Kaczynski argues that individuals in modern society are excessively socialized, resulting in a loss of excuse me, I've lost my spot there, are excessively socialized, resulting in a loss of personal autonomy and critical thinking abilities. I'm curious about that because when it comes to the question of over socialization at the time, we can think of that in the modern context with modern social media, TikTok, Snapchat, name a social media app that many people hate, right? That could be a prime example of that, right? But in his time, what he was writing about must have been things like densely packed cities. Of course, densely packed cities in the United States are nothing like densely packed cities overseas. Cheeky Mirror is over there filling me in on my psychic ability. She says, telekinesis, move things with your mind. Telepathic, read minds. Thank you, X-Men Comics, for that lesson. Yes, thank you, Cheeky. Appreciate that. The Critical Heretic says that the part about dealing with academics and their political and social dogmas was spot on. It's very cultish in nature. He also goes on to say that I found that even feminists get upset when you tell them that they're fine like Lizzo. I thought it was a compliment. Very funny. It wasn't a compliment. If you're tuning in to us just now, glad to have you here. Make sure you click that like on the channel, and we're grateful to have our listeners over there, especially on Rumble, where we've got 42 people watching now, 44 over on YouTube, which means that between that and between all of the people that are watching us over on Fire TV, Roku, and all of the different apps that we're watching, we've got well over 100 people watching us live this morning right now. Thank you for that. The funny thing is about the Wake Up America show, we started this last September, and we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of the Wake Up America show, and it's been exciting to see all of the growth. I think when we first started this show, we had maybe 20, 30 people watching live total, and now we are starting to trend to where we're getting over 100 people watching live in total. Think about this, where we'll be a year from now. And all of the people with the little emojis next to their names over on YouTube who are our monthly subscribers, some of them are going to be founding father levels at this point. And I'd like to see if maybe a year after that, we may have over 200 or 300 people watching live. I think that would be a tremendous achievement, wouldn't you? I'd be really excited to see that and to be a part of that. And I think certainly that would mean that we had been a big success. But we're getting there. We're working there. Things certainly don't happen overnight. And it's thanks to the little bits of support that we get here and there from the audience, sometimes large amounts. Last Friday, several people became monthly subscribers to the Wake Up America show. Several people joined in and dropped enormous super chats. I mean, sometimes I watch Tim Pool's show and I get jealous because I'm like, Jesus, look at how much money people are just donating to his show just for the quality of the entertainment that they get. And when those things happen to me on my show, it has a massive impact. See, when you donate to Tim Pool, you're just tossing a $20 bill on top of his mountain of cash. But when you give $20 or $30 to the Wake Up America show, you're helping to finance a 2-person operation that has dreams of making it big. So I do appreciate everybody who has been supporting and donating to us, and especially those who have been visiting the Wake Up America show's official shop, which is at ap4libertyshop.com. I won't go too much into a tangent on this one because this is kind of like a commercial, if you will. I do want to get back to Ted Kaczynski's manifesto because I do find it interesting, and we will get there. But I do briefly want to let you know that ap4libertyshop.com has got a ton of exciting new merchandise. We've got a new shirt that says, "My pronouns are we the people," and it's got an American Revolutionary Patriot on it. Make sure that you check that out. My All Gun Laws Are an Infringement shirt are just selling like hotcakes. Get yourself one. Check it out at ap4libertyshop.com. We're now, I'll just tell you a little bit of the mechanics. So I've been working my butt off to try and get the shop listed on other areas. We're now on Amazon.com. Our products are over there. We're also now starting to sell products on TikTok. We haven't sold any products over there yet, but the store is open on TikTok. And they're basically giving our products away over on TikTok. I'm not losing any money. TikTok is like subsidizing shops right now. So if you are a TikTok user and you want to get some items from AP for Liberty shop cheap, go buy them off of our TikTok shop. And it's just my account, AP for Liberty, over on TikTok. They've got like $5 coupons, $10 coupons, and TikTok is subsidizing that. So it's not like costing me more. It's not costing me to have to do those coupons. And here's the thing, the Amazon products, I have to charge more for them on Amazon because Amazon takes a huge cut. So the best place always to buy your products is typically at apforlibertyshop.com. Or right now, if you want to, if there's things that you've been wanting to buy and you want to get them really cheap and you do have TikTok, just go to my AP for Liberty page and then click on the little shop button and you can buy them for unbelievably cheap. So all right. Let's head back over to the channel. Yeah, Katie556 says that YouTube takes a 30% cut. That is true. If you are wanting to support the Wake Up America show on a monthly basis and you want to do like a $5 a month donation and have all $5 go to me, then the way to do that is to go to wakeupamerica.show.com/support. Let me just very briefly pull that up for you. I know that we did get one person last week on Friday who joined our wakeupamerica.show.com monthly support club on the website, and that really is the best place to do it. Hold on, it's not going to be formatted that well because I'm doing this on the fly. I don't have a producer. Oh, there we go, and it looks terrible anyway. Oh well. Let me just scroll down for you very briefly right there. So yeah, if you go to wakeupamerica.show.com/support, you can go down right here and do like either a one-time donation there, which is like basically a super chat, or you can do like a $5 a month. Don't tread on AP. Freedom Ninjas at 10. Peterson's Patriots, that's the most popular one, 1776. But if you do an Action Jackson plan, not only does you get a 20% off discount on the shop, which monthly supporters all get, but you also are going to get a free keychain. So if you do support the Wake Up America show and you've been looking for a way to get more involved in helping us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty, then I recommend the Peterson's Patriots plan. But if you do hit that Action Jackson plan, we do send you a free keychain. So, and everybody who is a monthly donor gets that 20% off, whether you're a $2.99 a month supporter or, Grant's Army, $50 a month. So check that out. Okay, cool. Gotta run. Let's get back over to the segment where we're talking about Ted Kaczynski. We are going to have Mark McCloskey joining us here in about 15 minutes to talk about the Trump indictment. So if you're looking at hearing more news about that, then stick around because Mark McCloskey is going to talk about that Trump indictment this morning at 8 a.m. Hotwater84 says, I've had about a dozen people ask me where I got the shirt. Always send them your way. Thank you so much. And Hotwater, please forgive me because you're kind of new to the chat. I don't know if you're male or female, so I don't know which pronoun to use. How would you like us to refer to you? All right, let's continue our discussion about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and what he believed about modern society. Freedom and society. Kaczynski argued in his manifesto that modern industrial society restricts individual freedom and stifles authentic human existence. I could argue that it's not industrial society restricting individual freedom, but it's the government itself. I don't feel restricted by Amazon.com and being able to get items that I need in order to be able to run my shop in 2 days, right? I don't feel restricted by Amazon.com because I can list my AP for LibertyShop.com products over there. I feel a little restricted that they charge me so much, but I get a benefit from that, and everybody benefits when it comes to a transaction. It's the government that restricts our individual freedom, not industrial society, if you will. I wouldn't argue that it was capitalism and markets, but I would argue that it is government and cronyism that restricts individual freedom. Now, when it comes to his concept that he details in his manifesto, he talks about the power process. And he discusses the importance of this concept, the power process, which involves setting goals, making efforts to achieve them, hello, John Rail, and experiencing the satisfaction of success. Absolutely, good point. He claims that modern society denies individuals the ability to engage in fulfilling power processes. That's interesting. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. Now, it may try and stifle it, right? It may encourage you away from it, from developing healthy habits, but there really wasn't anything that stood in the way of John Rail losing 95 pounds in the last year, right? What is it that's really standing in the way of you accomplishing greater goals than taking the risk, right? Jumping out there and making yourself available. You have to make opportunity knocks, and you have to open that door. And that really comes down to individual choice and individual freedom. That's my mind. So I don't agree with everything Uncle Ted had to say. Ted Kaczynski also said that in regards to surrogate activities, right? So according to him, individuals in industrial society substitute genuine power processes with, quote, surrogate activities. And what he means by that are things like careers, hobbies, or activism. However, these activities often fail to provide true fulfillment. How often, though? I'm not sure that that's the case. And I try not to take myself and use myself as an example of things, typically because I'm such an outlier in so many ways. But my career certainly is very fulfilling to me. I know a lot of people who are in a similar situation. Their career is very fulfilling to them. It's not that way for everybody. I will readily admit that. A lot of people are not happy with their careers and their careers do not fulfill them. And I certainly think that that will apply to a lot of people, especially the type of people who are looking at what Ted Kaczynski said here and saying, hey, this guy makes a lot of sense. But what about your hobbies? Your hobbies don't provide you with fulfillment. I mean, for me, it's scuba diving, and for me, it's playing video games, and for me, it's playing with my dogs and going for a walk around my property with my wife, and spending time with friends. This weekend, we're going canoeing with some friends, and then the Cantina crew. All of my supporters, we're all getting together later this summer for another float trip event. And those are my hobbies, and I find that quite fulfilling. But again, I'm not someone I think you should use it as an average because I really I lie outside the average on many of these things that people talk about. But in regards to activism, I guess you could say that it has not been fulfilling because I haven't been extremely successful with all of my activism. Although, what I have to measure my success of my activism in the number of people who send me messages years, usually after the fact, when they came into contact with me and said, "Hey, Austin, you made me a libertarian," or you red pilled me about this. As a matter of fact, you want to know who one of my biggest success case stories has been John Burke. Right, John Burke from All American Savage, which many of you who are watching me right now probably were introduced to me through John Burke. You have even heard him say on his own podcast that I was the guy who kind of red pilled him when it came to machine guns. Fascinating story. John Burke and I had a conversation. We had an argument about things like bump stock bans and machine gun regulations on the average citizens, and I actually changed his mind when it came to the reason why average Americans should be allowed to purchase machine guns without having to go through the costly and time-consuming process of acquiring the NFA stamp in order for them to be able to purchase the kinds of guns that our founding fathers would have thought that we absolutely deserve to have. So I see that as a huge success in my activism. That's very fulfilling, right? When I get to have that conversation with John Burke on his show and I get introduced to other people, right? I see that as sort of the fulfilling that is a very fulfilling sign that my activism has been successful, right? Especially it's one thing when you influence people will sometimes send me direct messages and they'll have I don't know who they are, right? And it's just kind of like an average Joe and that's very fulfilling. But when you see somebody like John Burke when somebody is an activist like Burke, when somebody who has a following like Burke, people like John are incentivized to not change their minds. What do I mean by that? And I won't go off too much on a tangent, but I'll just say that people who have power like John Burke, and people who have a following like John Burke and they have a successful business like John Burke, they're incentivized not to change their minds about things because changing your minds about things can be very dangerous because you can lose a portion of your audience, a portion of your customer base. And that's a risk that you take when you're at the level that somebody, John Burke, is at. And so I'm very proud of John for having the ability to change it, not only change his mind, but have an open mind. That is one of the most difficult things, especially for successful people, for them to have an open mind and to be able to change their mind because what has worked for them before has worked. Therefore, you would think that they would not want to change their minds. But I think truly the most successful people are the ones who can change their minds. Um, and when I say most successful, it's not necessarily just financially, because God knows there's a lot of people out there who are very stubborn and stuck in their ways who are successful financially. But finances are really just one example of success. And this is why I'm sometimes critical of Andrew Tate, because I think he places too much of an emphasis on things like sex and money, nice cars and things like that. And his followers get caught up in this concept of success. But, and I can only say this because it works for me. And I know that this isn't everybody's definition of happiness, but I believe that I have found true happiness in the sort of the balance that my lifestyle brings, right? I have adventure, right? I get to do exciting things and I get to travel and do the kinds of things that, perhaps an Andrew Tate character might have, right? And I've had the company of beautiful women in my life. And I'll tell you this, that the most satisfying and fulfilling time of my life is right now, settled down with a wife, building a family, having 5.5 acres, mowing my lawn, speaking to my friends and audience members 5 times a week in the morning, having the sort of the danger of a business that could fail at any point, and having to figure out how to pay for my own health insurance, right? And not being subsidized by a corporation, not having the support of a network, right? The chances of failing, doing a big trust fall and having the cantina crew there. But I'm tremendously fulfilled now by my much more, I would say, humble life that I live compared to the lifestyle that I had when I lived in New York City and Washington, D.C. So there's ways to find fulfillment that I think are outside of just financial means, right? Would it be nice to be, to get $50 million offers like Steven Crowder? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But I really don't know how much more it would sort of increase my satisfaction, because I don't think I could love my wife any more than I already do. I don't think I could love my life any more than I already do, right? So I guess maybe I'm on the outlier of, industrial society has not affected me like so many people have, but my hobbies, my life brings me the kind of joy that I wish I could share with other people to an extent. I think I do, to a small extent, right? On Family Friday, when I bring my wife in and you see our conversations together and you see us flirt and joke with each other, and we have a lot of fun. And that's my way of sort of sharing my happiness with you, is by sharing, the person I love the most in the world. I went off on a big tangent. I know. Sorry. We're supposed to be talking about Ted Kaczynski. Since we were talking about my buddy John, I do want to remind you that he has got a great coupon going on right now and a money back guarantee for his awesome products at shellshockcbd.com, which you can see lined up here for you. This pile keeps getting smaller and smaller, you'll notice, because I keep using these awesome products. And when I threw my back out last week, and I'm just starting to feel a little bit better today, this product saved my life. Roll on, roll out. The CBD Freeze Roll On says penetrates even the heaviest of armor. You can get 10% off Shell Shock CBD products right now going on. And if you don't like any of the products that you buy from there, just so you know, John will give you your money back. It's a money back guarantee. So you've got no excuse. Why don't you try it today? Visit shellshockcbd.com and use the code AP for Liberty so that he knows that I'm selling his CBD oil according to our contractual obligations. Check it out, shellshockcbd.com. Use that code AP for Liberty for 10% off. And don't forget, you've got that money back guarantee if you don't like it. All right, I've got to go to commercial break. We're going to talk about Ted Kaczynski again a little bit later, but here's the deal. I'm going to go get our friend Mark McCloskey to talk about the Trump indictment and his lawyerly views on these things. You know Mark McCloskey, the AR-15 gun guy? We're going to get his lawyerly view on the Trump indictment when we get back. Was it espionage? We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America Show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America Show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America Show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America Show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Well, I'm really happy that we've got such a big audience today because our next guest absolutely deserves it. Joining us here in just a moment, we're going to speak to Mark McCloskey. You know him as the AR-15 gun guy. Yeah, the gun-toting lawyer, ran for the U.S. Senate here in the Missouri and made a national name for himself, standing up for the kind of principles that we admire here on the show. He's going to talk to us here in just a moment about former President Donald Trump, who on Sunday branded the 37-count federal indictment he faces as nothing more than a distraction from the bribery allegations levied against President Biden. He also took aim at his ex-Attorney General William Barr for not backing him over the classified documents case. Joining us now to discuss is that gun-toting lawyer, Mark McCloskey. Good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. Did I hear you say former president?
Well, he's not the current president, I guess, but we could talk about the Constitution.
A matter of opinion, I suspect.
It is. Mark, give me your broad take on this, the indictments, 37 counts against Trump.
Well, you know, the bottom line is this. The Presidential Records Act is not a criminal statute. It has no criminal penalty attached to it. So then they have to bring in the Espionage Act, which has never been applied. I mean, it was enacted in 1917 under Woodrow Wilson, who put a bunch of his political adversaries in prison under false pretenses. So it's always been just a political weapon, never been used against well, your phrase ex-president, my phrase current president in the past. And yet, in order to be guilty of a violation of the Espionage Act, you have to disclose material relevant to the defense or security of the United States to a foreign adversary, right? There's been not even any evidence, not a single word in that indictment. I read the entire thing that alleges that Donald Trump revealed any classified or sensitive military information to any foreign adversary or enemy. So it doesn't fit the classification of the Espionage Act. And then you talk about obstruction. You know, in all those pages and in all those 36 counts against President Trump, there's not a single word alleging that he destroyed any document or altered any document. And so here they have an attempt to destroy his election chances. By the way, I think he's up 10% in the polls since before he was indicted last week. So that's not necessarily going to have the effect they wanted. But there's not a word in there that says that he obstructed justice in any way, that he conspired to obstruct justice. But then when you compare it to the way that the Justice Department dealt with Hillary Clinton, where there was at least evidence of 110 different documents, which were classified documents, which she had on her private server, where there was no connection between her server and her government server, meaning somebody had to either copy or either by photocopying or transcribing classified documents and then reprint them, copy them onto her personal servers, having then deleted the classified reference. So Hillary Clinton said that originally in her first statement, she said there is no classified documents on my server. Then she said, there are no documents marked classified on my server. A subtle difference, but a material difference under the law if you're going to charge somebody with false statements, right? Not only did she never get charged with false statements, she never got charged for her lawyers deleting 32,000 emails, never got charged for her followers beating her cell phones to death with hammers or bleach pitting them, and then you go back even further. You go back to the Clinton sock drawer documents, right? And there, the judge specifically said that the Presidential Records Act gives the president and an ex-president exclusive jurisdiction and exclusive authority to decide what are his personal papers and what are not. And of course, as president, you can declare anything you want to, classified or not classified, because you're the boss, you're the president, you're the guy that decides what is classified and what is not. And so all this stuff is completely bogus. But the problem is, and I've said this from the get-go, I mean, as soon as my wife and I got charged here in the city of St. Louis with Class E felonies for doing nothing more than defending ourselves, where you have a rogue prosecutor and you have a jury that's going to, grand jury that's going to find you guilty no matter what because they hate you in the first place, and they're only getting half the story in the second place. And then you go to a jury, not of your peers, but of political adversaries that want to destroy you and want to spend the rest of your life. I mean, President Trump's 10 years older than me. Any of these charges, if I was found guilty of them, would put me in prison for the rest of my life. I mean, the left, as I always say, there's only one unforgivable crime in America today, and that's standing up against the power elite, standing up against the left, standing up against the swamp. And they will not forgive and forget. They will never forgive and forget. No matter what President Trump does, they will not rest until they can see him punished for having the gall to stand up against him. And death isn't good enough for him. Assassination isn't good enough anymore. You got to make him suffer longer. There's nothing these evil bastards would like better than to have Donald Trump spend the rest of his life in some solitary cell being attended to by some people that really love him.
Yeah, hopefully not the same guards that were looking over Jeffrey Epstein. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're grateful to have you here. I'm speaking to the gun-toting lawyer, Mark McCloskey, who's joining us right now to talk about the Trump indictment. Mark, Justin Amash, former congressman from Michigan, who was no fan of President Donald Trump, tweeted this the other day. He said, "I'm categorically opposed to charging anyone under the Espionage Act, even those who seem obviously to have engaged in espionage. It has a terrible history of abuse. Government has employed it to avoid scrutiny and chill free speech, and it violates basic tenets of due process." Do you agree?
Absolutely, I agree. And as I mentioned earlier, it was a law enacted for the specific purpose of political suppression. And you know, I absolutely got to love the swamp. I absolutely have to love. I really believe that what the left does, what the power elite does, is they create the most hypocritical situation on earth to see what we'll buy, see what we'll take. Here you got Hillary Clinton with everything she's done. You got Joe Biden with sensitive documents in dilapidated cardboard boxes falling apart in his garage, right? You got thousands of boxes of documents hidden around in all his organizations. And then they charge President Trump with 36 counts of having documents which he told the federal government he had, which he allowed them to come in and inspect, which they then asked him to secure more by putting a second lock on the door where he kept them, which he did. And so you now have to try to convince the American people that Donald Trump is an evil son of a gun that should spend the rest of his life in prison for doing something that every ex-president has done, which is retain documents, and doing something which the current president did illegally when he was a senator and a vice president, and did so much more. And then, just to put the cherry on the top of the hypocrisy and the proof that this is nothing more than a police state, on the day that the FBI, after having been threatened with contempt, finally calls up a document which has substantial evidence that Joe Biden is taking bribes from from our actual military adversaries, actually committing treason, actually committing espionage, actually trading American tax dollars for influence in Ukraine and then getting bribes. That gets hidden by coming up with this completely bogus indictment against Donald Trump. But it's just the way it manipulates. Everything is a distraction, and then you have to have distractions of the distractions to keep you from focusing on the big picture, which is, of course, a constant push for this, new world order and the single world socialist government, which is where we're headed.
Mark, have you looked into this bribery allegation against Joe Biden? Do you think that where there's smoke, there's fire here?
Well, I know that the Nancy Mace has seen it, and she says there is. The people that have actually seen the document seem to think that the source is not only credible, but one that the FBI has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to for his information in the past. And so you got to think it. But, it's not just that. You've got the House Oversight Committee on weaponization, which has shown 20 shell LLCs filtering millions and millions and millions of dollars. Now what? 9 different members of the Biden family. And what do? What's their corporation? What do they have to sell other than influence? And if you're collecting millions of dollars from foreign governments and setting up 20-some bogus LLCs to filter the money through, it's hard for me to imagine. And I've got a pretty good imagination. I've been a lawyer for 38 years, and part of what we have to do is come up with ways to sell stuff that may not be that saleable. But it's pretty hard to come up with an explanation for 20 shell companies filtering millions of dollars into 9 members of the family of a guy who is a senator, then vice president, and now president, when they don't have a single skill to sell other than influence.
Now, do you think that the Trump team is taking this indictment seriously enough? I mean, because when they're attacking former Attorney General Bob Barr, right, you have to remember that Barr actually protected Trump from Mueller, but because, Barr didn't storm the Capitol on January 6th, he's considered a traitor, right? But I mean, nobody's ever disputed Attorney General Barr's legal acumen here. I mean, it feels as if the Trump team is trying to sort of slough this off here when there are some serious charges that he's going to have to answer for.
Well, I think they are taking it seriously, and I think they're going to defend it seriously. I think that the bulk of the charges themselves, I won't say the bulk, all of it, because first of all, you can't predicate a crime on a non-criminal act. But let's say they aren't 100% confident this is all just going to go away. I guarantee they will defend it. But Bill Barr has shown that he's not going to take it. Now, let me find a polite way of saying this. I'll go back to my case. When I got indicted, 16 sitting congressmen, headed by Jody Arrington of Northwest Texas, sent a letter to Bill Barr, signed by 16 sitting congressmen, asking Bill Barr to bring charges against Kim Gardner for violating my civil rights, for charging me for doing no more than defending myself. Barr was absolutely silent, took no action whatsoever. And now that he is the ex-attorney general, virtually every statement he makes is against Donald Trump. And I don't know what his animosity is rooted in, but it's not based in the law. And by the way, I advise everybody to pull up Mark Levin's show from last night on Fox, because he lays it up pretty well. And he's done his homework, and he's pulled up all the articles with regard to the Clinton sock drawer incident, Hillary incident, the Biden papers, and lays out how there's not even a smidgen of actual claim against President Trump, and the fact that they refuse to prosecute people that have done actual obstruction, actually destroyed documents, and not just a few, actually engaged in espionage by taking classified documents, top secret documents, copying them down, putting them on an unsecured server, and then deleting the classified reference so that he can then lie and say no documents marked classified are on their server. And if that's not a crime, then what President Trump has done is certainly no crime. And once again, whether this is something which is pursuable or not, just the image of the government of the United States taking this kind of action in an election season under a guy who is far and away the leading candidate for the opposition party, this just reeks of the Soviet Union. This reeks of Cuba. This reeks of Venezuela. This reeks of the Communist Party of China. This is not the United States. I've been calling this throughout ever since January 6th of 2020, 21. I've called this the coup by subpoena, and it's gotten beyond coup by subpoena. It's no longer a matter of them coming in and kicking in your doors at 4 o'clock in the morning and bringing a SWAT team to arrest you for what? It's now gotten to be coup by threat of imprisonment for the rest of your life. The January 6th political prisoners are sitting in cells, some of them now for years, for crimes of what? Trespass, minor misdemeanors, being on Capitol grounds. These are people that have been imprisoned under horrible circumstances for minor misdemeanors. These are political prisoners. And why do they do that to the January 6ers? To threaten the you-know-what out of anybody else that would dare stand up and raise their voice against this tyranny. And it's effective. Look at how all the courts in the country have refused to look at any evidence of election fraud. You know, everybody says, oh, there's no evidence of election fraud. Thousands and thousands of affidavits attesting to election fraud in the 2020 election. And I've been doing this for a long time as a lawyer. Affidavits are evidence in every court in this country. And to say there's no evidence of election fraud is to say that when the rain's falling all around you and there's puddles under your feet, there's no evidence of rain.
Okay, but here's the thing, and this was your joke from the very beginning of this one, where you said Trump, you said former president. So the problem with this thinking here, Mark, and as you're someone who's, I'm sure, read the Constitution a few times, like myself, with the whole Donald Trump won the last election, is this is what the Constitution says in terms of term limits for American presidents. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Then by Trump's own theories and by your own theory there that he won that last election, he's no longer eligible to be president.
Well, in that case, if you want to do that, let's have a restart. Let's have Trump start his second term today. He can pardon himself and we go forward for 4 years of good government instead of 2 more years of absolute corruption and self-dealing. Let's do that restart. I vote for that right now.
Okay, that's Mark McCloskey, the gun-toting lawyer. Mark, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us this morning?
Well, here's the thing. I think we should not tolerate this. If we tolerate this, the Declaration of Independence calls us a government by the consent of the governed. And every bad thing that happens from this transgender crap, gender affirming care, which is bullshit, it's mutilation of children. It happens because we consent to it happening. If we would all stand up and say, hell no, we're not going to take this BS. If 100,000 people showed up in Miami tomorrow afternoon and stood out there and just barred the way to the courthouse, the president's got too much honesty in him to do anything illegal or improper. But the American people need to rise up and say, we will not tolerate this. What I've called for is a general strike tomorrow, that between 2 and 4 p.m. tomorrow Eastern time, everybody just stop. Turn off your cars wherever you are. If you're a small businessman, close your doors and turn out your lights. Have 60, 70 million people, the people that voted for Donald Trump, 80 million if you believe Mike Lindell, who I spent the weekend with down at Branson this week. Everybody that voted for Donald Trump, turn off your cars, turn off your lights, close your businesses, show the world that we will not tolerate this kind of Stalinistic assault by the power structure, that we're still a free country and will only be free if we demand our freedom.
Well, see, that'll be easy for me because that's nap time for me, actually, Mark. Where can people follow you online?
I'm on Twitter, I'm on Rumble, I'm on Facebook. I don't currently have a website up because I haven't decided if I'm pursuing a new political career, if I'm just going to stay a pundit.
Well, we'd love to see you if in any capacity, Mark. Our listeners over there are giving the big Mark McCloskey salute, and they're very grateful for you joining us this morning, being so generous with your time, as am I. Hey, Mark, we were very, very, very grateful for you. Thank you very much. Keep up the fight for freedom. We appreciate you. We sure will. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right. Do you want to continue that conversation about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, where we're talking about his ode to industrial society? Oh, that's quite an ode, quite an antipode. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get back, and I'll play that interview that I did with Spike Cohen about why so much libertarian love for Robert Kennedy Jr. We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America Show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my that philosophy is much more libertarianism than
well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and
always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins!
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Did you like our good buddy Mark McCloskey? Good. Glad you enjoyed him. Always love having him on the program. He's got an interesting point of view. You can text the show today at 573-319-1586 with your thoughts on the topics of the day. If there's anything that you think that we missed in the morning show, we'd love to hear from you. You can always let us know what you think about the program. And if you like what you're hearing today, I see we've got a lot of viewers over on Rumble, but not a lot of likes. Click that like button for us if you wouldn't mind. All of our Rumblers joining us this morning help us to spread that message of economic freedom and personal liberty. And of course, if you're viewing us over on YouTube as well, we'd love it if you would do the exact same thing. We're very grateful for all the support. Okay, so let's continue our conversation that we were having a little bit earlier about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, who unalived himself in prison last weekend. We were talking a little bit about his manifesto, again, his rantings against industrial society. And what's fascinating to me is his focus specifically on leftism and essentially his critiques of leftism, which I believe are probably what has inspired many people to agree with and defend Ted Kaczynski, despite the fact that he killed 3 people and injured, I believe, 24 more. I was going through his manifesto, and specifically, I found some of these passages where he talks about modern leftism and how it emerges from this deep-seated discontent with industrialization. Kaczynski posits in his manifesto that leftism is driven by feelings of powerlessness and that it seeks to rectify perceived social inequalities and injustices through radical societal restructuring. According to Kaczynski's analysis, he says leftism tends to favor collective solutions over individual autonomy. Fascinating. Leftists, not Kaczynski, advocate for a more centralized and controlled society as a means to address societal problems. Very true. Nailed it on the head there. He also contends that technology plays a pivotal role in the development of leftism, as he believes it alienates individuals from nature, authentic human experiences, and a sense of personal freedom. That's a fascinating charge. Don't know that I necessarily believe that technology is the cause for that, but I think it probably plays a role. And why do I think that? Well, I think that because here's how I take this. My thinking is that people are attracted to radical ideologies for many reasons. It can be for the same reasons people were attracted to National Socialism in Weimar Germany, of which there were many reasons even then, but largely out of desperation, out of fear, a desire to change one's place and status in the world, and a leader with promises of utopia. Certainly seems to be an improvement over the hyperinflationary period of the Weimar Republic. And again, desperate people go to desperate and radical ideologies. But then also on the opposite side of things, if we think of this as like a horseshoe theory, I think one of the reasons why people are interested in radical ideologies is for one simple word that is probably going to be very unsatisfying to you as an answer, but I think it's boredom. And this actually is an outcropping of industrial society. The reason why I think so many people turn to radical ideologies like communism or National Socialism is because their lives are soft. Their lives are simple. Their lives, everything is taken care of for them. You can order food, if I'm supporting what Ted Kaczynski is saying here to some extent, that modern conveniences have led to people who feel as if their lives are meaningless, right? When you have to sort of build up your own life without the support of technology, right, then that struggle defines you as a person. And in continuing that struggle of life, Mein Kampf, my struggle. All right, just kidding. It's a joke, all right? For all the YouTube censors out there. Just a little Hitler joke. I think that out of boredom, people seek to define their lives and find meaning in their lives in radical ideologies. And they embrace these radical ideologies out of a desire to define themselves and to find out who they are and to test themselves. And by putting themselves up against the establishment and attempting to reorder society, right, through hyper-centralization, such as the left, and how the left wishes, through Marxism to try and reorganize society, they see themselves as heroes in their struggle, right? In the tale, they see themselves just like Hitler did, right? My struggle. The, National Socialists and Communists, the difference between the two of them is just one has the explicit racial angle, but even Adolf Hitler admitted that without the racial angle of National Socialism, they might as well just be Marxists. Well, essentially, that's why, Nazis and National Socialists really are the same as Marxists, with just the one contributing factor that they despise the Jews and, people who are not of their Aryan race, if you will. So in his manifesto, Ted Kaczynski says that leftism, in pursuit of egalitarianism and social justice, undermines personal liberties and erodes individual freedoms, ultimately leading to the loss of autonomy and self-determination. I mean, who could disagree with that? A leftist, obviously. Kaczynski, of course, gained notoriety for his involvement in a bombing campaign aimed at drawing attention to his anti-technology and his anti-industrialization beliefs. Human nature. Kaczynski asserted that modern society's suppression of essential human nature leads to psychological problems and societal dysfunction. Probably true. Kaczynski predicted a worsening of social problems in the future due to the detrimental effects of technological process. Now, in his manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future, he does include some critiques of conservatism as well. Well, his primary focus was on industrial technological society and the negative consequences. He does touch on conservatism. Here are a few points related to his critiques of conservatism. Ted Kaczynski, in his section titled The Psychology of Modern Leftism, mentioned that leftism is not the only ideology he critiques. He states that conservatives also contribute to the problems of modern society, but their psychological motivations differ from those of leftists. Ted Kaczynski argued that conservatives are often preoccupied with preserving or restoring traditional social structures, which he sees as problematic. He believes that conservatism reinforces the status quo, perpetuating the destructive tendencies of industrial society. So consider this. Have you ever heard Michael Malice's quote that conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit? Right? Because if you consider it, if conservatism is about conserving what came before us, well, what progressives have laid, and what leftists have put into place before us, conservatives are attempting to preserve. Right? A conservative is a progressive from 20 years ago, right? So Kaczynski's ideology here seems to be more radical in the sense it's not conservative. He argues that, if conservatives are preoccupied with preserving or restoring traditional social structures, those social structures were ones based on leftism and collectivization. We could see that quite frequently. He criticizes conservatism's emphasis on maintaining existing power structures and its resistance to societal change. Kaczynski asserts that conservatism's attachment to established norms and traditions inhibits progress and hinders necessary transformations, which I kind of find ironic considering that he's all about criticizing social progress in a way, and industrialization and modernization. I find that to be quite fascinating. All right. Well, one of the great ways that you can preserve your legacy, and if everything goes to hell and industrial society collapses on itself, is to invest in gold and silver. I endorse and recommend my friends at Lear Capital, because they have got not only some of the best prices in the market, but they have got a great deal going on right now. If you buy gold, you will get some silver for free. And you want to find out more about that deal, then I suggest that you call them today at 1-800-885-2175. You remember that old technology, the telephone? You should still use it. Call them today at 1-800-885-2175. Or here's the thing, for those of you who are technology averse, who are feeling very Ted Kaczynski-ish, use a technology that doesn't require you to interact with another person. Although I think Ted would prefer that you give him a call. Uncle Ted would say, no, use the old technology. Give him a call, 1-800-885-2175 to find out how to invest in gold and silver if you want to go live out in a cabin in the woods. You can visit LearAustin.com before you head to that cabin in the woods, LearAustin.com. Visit that website today. Sign up for a free gold and silver informational packet so that you can get more information on how to invest in order to protect your legacy if industrial civilization does indeed collapse. That phone number again, 1-800-885-2175. That's 1-800-885-2175. Visit LearAustin.com today. Visit it right now, LearAustin.com. All right, coming up next, Spike Cohen had a conversation with me about the libertarian fascination with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A lot of people who call themselves libertarians are voting Democrat. Take a listen to this. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Grateful to have you here. We've had an absolutely stellar program so far with top-notch guests, but it only gets better, especially for lovers of liberty who are joining us now. And if you're a big freedom lover, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to whichever channel you're watching us on. Help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty, which is what my next guest is all about. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A lot of libertarians say they're switching from the Libertarian Party to vote Democrat. That doesn't make any sense. Voting Republican, I could understand. My next guest, though, he's sticking with the LP, and he says he's not falling for the beguiling charms of any Kennedy. His name is Spike Cohen, and he's joining us now on the line. Good morning, Spike. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Austin. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Spike, you're not like a lot of people with the capital L these days. I'd say you stand out as probably one of the best voices for liberty, not just for the Libertarian Party itself, but for our message of economic freedom and personal liberty. So I'd like to thank you first up front for being such a great leader. And second of all, I'd like to ask you about your Libertarian Party strategy, considering that so many people are saying that, they're going to temporarily leave the LP, join the Democrats, and vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A lot of conservatives like that because they think that, the more problems for Biden, the better. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm not necessarily against that. If someone wants to, whether they're in an open primary state like mine, where they want to vote Democrat or vote for Robert Kennedy to, in the primaries, or temporarily change their registration to do so, I don't necessarily see a problem with that, unless you're in a state where the LP loses ballot access if its number of registered voters goes down. So be careful you don't end up screwing the party there. But I'm not necessarily against that. My whole point of kind of pushing back against this RFK love that I've seen is that this is a man who, when I was running for vice president and going across the country and meeting people whose lives were being destroyed by the lockdowns and who were their children's education was being destroyed by the school closures, and the entire COVID regime was destroying everything they built, RFK was on Twitter calling for those lockdowns to be extended because he thought they were good for the environment. And maybe he has, in more recent times, changed his tune on this, and maybe he's, truly had a conversion moment and realizing that was all wrong. But A, I've yet to hear him say he was wrong, and B, it's often awful coincidental that he discovered this right as he decided to run for president.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, Spike. I'm not falling for that because one, he's an environmental lawyer, which environmental lawyers typically are not right-leaning libertarians or conservatives or people who agree with us on the environment. So that's a big issue because the one of the fundamental bases of our views is free market capitalism, which of course Robert F. Kennedy is not. But I think that you and I know quite well why many libertarians are deciding to go and support Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And it has everything to do with his stance on vaccines, not necessarily COVID tyranny, but vaccines in general, which, Spike, as much as we may not be big fans of big pharma or anything like that, I'm not a big believer in the whole vaccines cause autism theory. Now, they might cause libertarianism, but autism, that's a bridge too far. All right, just kidding. But what is the
But
libertarian?
we repeat ourselves, yes.
Yes. What is the libertarian attraction to Robert F. Kennedy, considering he is so opposed to us on so many issues?
Yeah, so I think some of it might be the anti-vax, and again, like you said, the broadly anti-vax, not just against the COVID mandates and so forth. Some of that might be it, but I do think that some of it is when it comes to many things. Even more recently on gun rights, he's been saying all the right things, and he's been going into our spaces onto libertarian and liberty-leaning podcasts, and he's been saying good things, things that we agree with. I tend to be like you. I look at his history. I look at, him calling for climate change denial being illegal. He went even further and said that companies should be shut down by the government who, as he put it, put profits ahead of public welfare, which is like ESG on steroids, instead of, ESG companies threatening to hurt your stock. The government just shuts your company down if you don't line up with what they consider public welfare. And yeah, he's called for repealing the Second Amendment. I mean, again, this could all be a major change. He could have decided that he was wrong all along and that we've been right all along. But I'm not hearing that. I'm just hearing him change his tune. And it just so happens that it's happening right as he's running for president. And we need to remember, he's not the first anti-establishment Democrat to come down, to come down the pike. And what has happened with those other ones when they've come down the pike? When they get steamrolled by the DNC, they end up supporting Joe Biden. And so any money that was given to them, any donor info, any personal contact info, any email addresses that have been given to them end up going towards the fight to keep Joe Biden in the White House.
I mean, you make a good point there, Spike. And if you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us here. Make sure that you click that like button so that we can spread the message of freedom today. We're speaking to Spike Cohen. He's the former Libertarian Party vice presidential candidate. I got to give a big shout out and a thank you to Studio 314 for that big tip you dropped in the tip jar. He says, Spike for President 2024. Don't worry, we'll get there, Studio 314. But I want to ask you about Robert F. Kennedy's position when it comes to guns. Everybody knows that's a big issue for me, Spike. Obviously, one of the things that I was infamous for was giving the gun to Gary Johnson. It got thrown in the garbage, and, everybody's been, bitching and moaning about it ever since. But when it comes to guns and Robert F. Kennedy, he's very clearly in the past called for bans of guns.
Yes.
However, just last week, he came out and said that the Supreme Court has decided this, which you never hear Democrats say. And the thing, what I find fascinating about this, though, Spike, is when he's called for gun bans in the past, whenever somebody questions him on it, he says, "Oh, well, my family has been the victim of gun violence. Don't question me about this because can't you understand how I feel? Because my family have been victims of gun violence." The only problem with that is, Spike, is that he says that the CIA killed his uncle. That's a far cry difference from the type of mass shootings and things that we're talking about. The CIA versus civilians here. He seems to like to play both sides on that issue.
Yeah, his family sadly is the victim of government violence, which is a reason to be opposed to gun control. And yeah, hopefully he's changed. He truly has changed his tune on this. But I mean, even when he's talked about it now, he has said, we're not going to take people's guns for now. That's not something we're going to do for now. Okay, what about later? And we do know, again, many, many years he's been calling for repealing the Second Amendment. He said that gun rights groups were terrorist organizations. So again, as with everything else, maybe he's changed his mind on this, but it is awful coincidental that this happened right as he was deciding to run for president. And my concern is, and hopefully I'm wrong, but my concern is that this is a Democrat who is getting a bunch of libertarian support and who is getting a bunch of libertarian donations and personal contact information when people sign up to his to volunteer or whatever else. And then if and when he endorses Joe Biden, that all just goes to Biden. I mean, I get it, and I'm not again, like I said, I'm not even against trying to make Biden's life harder by voting for RFK in the primaries. But I caution. I guess what I'm asking people who's watching this to do: don't give RFK Jr. anything that you don't want to eventually go to Joe Biden.
That's a really good point there, and I'm definitely going to clip that and put that out later on our socials. Spike, in terms of celebrity, there's actual celebrities, Hollywood celebrities, there are political celebrities, and then in terms of the pecking order, below that are libertarian political celebrities. However, libertarians are very prone to the same kinds of cults of personality and celebrity love that anybody else is. So when a Kennedy shows up, it makes sense to me that a lot of libertarians are just kind of like, oh, he's a Kennedy. Oh, that's, he's got a last name. I saw that back in 2016 when I ran for president. People were like, they loved Gary Johnson, and, you could say lots of nice things about Gary and some negative things about Gary, but a lot of libertarians supported him because they thought, oh, he's a name and he's kind of a celebrity. But they did the same thing when it came to Bill Weld. He was a name. He was a political celebrity. He had been a governor. There's a lot of kind of like stars in their eyes. You probably have seen this when you've been to libertarian political conventions, where there's a lot of kind of like, it's kind of like, I don't know, how people react when Justin Bieber goes down the street, but only in a like much, I guess I don't want to say pathetic way, but it is kind of sad when people are like goo goo gagaing over like people like Bill Weld or things like that. But it was kind of pathetic.
Yeah, it's
to
like
watch.
Hollywood for nerds.
Yeah, Hollywood for nerds, if you will. So do you think that that's kind of one of the big parts of it with the love for Robert F. Kennedy, is that it's just a last name?
That's probably some of it. I think there's multiple factors, and I think just having a prominent political figure of any kind, especially on the Democrat side, which we are not used to at all, coming out and saying a lot of stuff that we agree with and have been saying all along. I invite people to remember that this was one of the main proponents of everything we hate up until shortly before he decided to run for president. Now, of course, as we all know, whenever a Democrat politician named Kennedy changes their views based on who they're talking to, which group they're talking to, you can completely trust that whatever they're telling your group is the truth. They're lying to everyone else but you. So we can definitely trust that.
If you're just tuning in to Hollywood for Nerds, we're going to have to give that, coin that for Spike. Thanks for tuning into the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Peterson. If you haven't already, click that like button. We're grateful to have you here. It looks like we've been getting some super chats this morning. We're super grateful for that. Studio 314 has been donating this morning a lot of money. Thank you, Studio 314. We're grateful for that. We use that to help spread the message, which is what we're all about here. And it's why we have guests like Spike Cohen on the show. Spike, you've been very successful at spreading libertarian ideas. You have a very positive message. It's very optimistic, whereas a lot of libertarians tend to be pessimistic or fatalistic and fall prone. I think that a lot of the conspiracy thinking is sort of tied to a lot of the fatalism that we have in the movement. When you sort of believe that we're being controlled by reptilian overlords, and there's this kind of like, I guess, this idea that there really is no hope, that there's no chance for us to change. It's why a lot of libertarians don't vote. But you've taken the conventional political process, despite calling yourself an anarchist to a certain extent, right? Encouraged people to vote for you while you were the vice presidential candidate last time, and to vote for George Jorgensen and others. Why have you not eschewed typical politics like so many other anarchists or libertarians and told people not to vote?
Right. So there's kind of two questions there. One is, why should we remain hopeful? And two is, why should we be involved in electoral politics? The first one is pretty simple. The moment that you allow yourself to become black-pilled and have no more hope, our reptilian overlords have already won. Because that's ultimately the goal, is to make sure that you are so devastated and frustrated and angry and upset that you just give up and say, well, we're never going to win. We're never going to get anywhere. So that's the first thing. We can't, as long as we're still alive, there's still hope, and we need to continue pushing forward. Now, when it comes to electoral politics, that's not going to be everyone's bag. My thing is this. As long as that proxy violence exists, which is the vote, I'm going to use it in self-defense. I'm not going to vote for people who promise to give me slightly less tyranny. I'm not going to vote for people who promise to give less tyranny to me and more tyranny to others. I'm going to vote for people who want to drastically reduce the amount of tyranny. Now, if there are people out there that say that goes against their ethics to vote, or that they don't think it's useful, that's perfectly fine. I personally think that if voting wasn't the least bit useful, then the duopoly wouldn't exist. They wouldn't care who we voted for if it truly didn't matter. They wouldn't put all the ballot access restrictions. They wouldn't do everything they can to keep the so-called third parties off the ballot and keep them out of the media and everything else. They wouldn't have their debate cartel and everything else if it truly didn't matter. But if it's something that you're not into, there's plenty of other work to do out there. I have a nonprofit called You Are the Power. We don't do electoral politics. We find people that need help, and we organize their communities around them and help spread the liberty message by helping people. So there's many ways that you can spread liberty outside of electoral politics. That's just one of the ones that I choose to use as well.
Spike, talk to us about the Libertarian Party. There was a big takeover by the Mises Caucus in the last convention. Many libertarians thought that this would be the wave of the future, and that the new leadership of the Libertarian Party would lead to increased registrations, voter registrations, more people joining the Libertarian Party. How has that panned out?
I mean, that remains to be seen long term. I will say this: the Mises Caucus and the takeover exist because of long-standing frustration with the status quo of the Libertarian Party. I mean, you saw that frustration when you were running as well, and it wasn't being addressed for quite some time. And so now the takeover has happened. And what I told, I said this publicly, and I said to all the leadership, of the newly minted or newly elected leadership of the Libertarian Party in Reno about this time last year, you're no longer the Mises Caucus. You are now the leadership of the Libertarian Party. This is now, you're the captains of this boat. You need to take us where you said you were going to take us. So, we're about a year into the new leadership. So it truly remains to be seen long term how that's going to work out. But I will say this: if the frustration that led to that isn't properly addressed, then we're just going to be in the constant phase of takeovers between the more radical elements of the party and the more so-called pragmatic elements of the party is going to continue endlessly, as it has for decades, until we come up with a workable blueprint to actually accomplish our goals within the party, get people elected, and spread the liberty message. And it really doesn't matter who's in charge. It's what we're doing.
Cheeky Mayor over in the live stream says, every libertarian I've talked to at the meetings do not like the caucuses. Chris Morrill says, Spike has made his peace with the Mises caucus. I don't think that I can. Rare Camellia says, imagine First Lady Tasha, classiest, most beautiful First Lady ever. Hint, hint, Spike, you going to run?
I don't know yet, but I clearly the eyes are on the real prize, which is Tasha being the first lady. I don't know yet. It will really come down to some questions that need to be answered over the summer and fall, which are, where can I best serve this movement? And there are many other smaller questions that need to be answered to answer that one. But the bottom line is, if I knew I were running for president, I wouldn't be doing anything differently than I am right now. And if I knew that I wasn't, I wouldn't be doing anything differently than I am right now. Ultimately, I'm going to be wherever I can help grow and best help the liberty movement.
Spike, do you think that the Libertarian National Committee should be doing anything differently right now?
Right now, I honestly have been so focused on You Are the Power that I haven't stuck to what the LP is doing at the granular level. After the new leadership took over, I said, okay, I'm going to do what I'm doing with You Are the Power, which I've already been doing, and I'm going to allow the delegates and the new leadership to work this out. So I would be. It wouldn't be fair to anyone for me to try to give some kind of, 30,000-foot view take on it when I truly don't know at the granular level what's going on a day-to-day basis.
Are there any Republicans who are currently running for president right now that make you want to vomit the absolute least?
I mean, sure. I would say that... Yeah, that's not a really... I put it this way. That's actually another reason why RFK Jr. is getting the support he is he's sounding more liberty-leaning than currently any of the Republican candidates that are running. I mean, Ron DeSantis has been good on some things, but not so good on others. If it comes to foreign policy, I mean, Ron DeSantis looks like a more MAGA-friendly version of Nikki Haley. So I really... That's a tough one, and I think that actually is... In this moment, I'm realizing just how much of the support for RFK is coming from not just from liberty circle or libertarian circles, but from, I guess, freedom loving or liberty leaning Republican circles who are frustrated with that camp.
Yeah, certainly we all very frustrated. It does seem as if Ron DeSantis is backing off some of his statements that he made about Ukraine initially to try and please the more hawkish elements of the party, which, is definitely concerning. It's sad to say that Donald Trump may be the best when it comes to foreign policy out of all the candidates running. But of course, none of them hold a candle to the Libertarian Party candidates who we know hold to a strict non-interventionist foreign policy, which I believe, and I think you believe, Spike, is best for our country. Spike, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we let you go?
The one thing I will say is be wary of what politicians say. And I guess that even includes me because I'm technically a politician too out here. So, be skeptical of especially if someone is actively running for office, be very skeptical of what it is they're saying and be very critical of what it is they're saying and line it up against their past history of actions. And again, don't give them anything that you don't want to possibly eventually go to your political opponents, especially if they're in a major party, because if they're running as a Democrat, it's going to all end up going to whoever wins the Democrat nomination. If it's going to a Republican, it's going to end up going to whoever wins the Republican nomination. So just be very aware of what's happening.
That's why I get all those annoying emails from all the Republican candidates. Spike Cohen, he is a former Libertarian Party vice presidential candidate and the head of the We Are the Power Institution, and potentially might be a presidential candidate next year. We'd love to see it, Spike. You got a lot of fans in our audience. Thank you for being so generous with your time today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Thank you to everyone tuning in. Have a great morning.
Thank you very much. Have a great morning. That's Spike Cohen. What did you think? Send us a text. 573-319-1586 is the text line. I got to give a big thank you, big shout out to Quest Fanning. He says that Rachel Nix put Spike on my radar. All right, and that's that. Well, I think today was actually a pretty good show. How about you? Well, for a Monday, if you will. I'm super grateful for all the support of the people who've been tuning in to us every morning since the beginning of time. Since September, this September, we're going to be coming up on our 1-year anniversary. And to celebrate that, we've got an event coming up actually in August for all of the Cantina crew members. If you are interested in joining us deep in the heart of the Ozarks here in Missouri for a float trip, we're going to be doing a canoe trip for all of our friends of the show. You don't have to be a monthly subscriber or anything like that in order to join us. You can just be a friend and a supporter and want to come hang out with a bunch of cool people here. So if you need more information about that, make sure that you reach out to us online, AP for Liberty, basically everywhere. And definitely want to let you know that we've got lots of great items coming every single day over at apforlibertyshop.com. Here's the deal. I know that some people who have reached out to me have said that they're interested in the American flag patriotic shoes over at apforlibertyshop.com. Well, here's the thing. So if you want to get your shoes by the 4th of July, then you're going to want to order them like now. Now is like the peak time, or after this Friday. I can't promise that you're going to get your patriotic sneaks in time. So make sure that you go to apforlibertyshop.com today. We've got them in men's and women's. We actually have 2 different styles for women. The patriotic shoes and everything at apforlibertyshop.com in the 4th of July collection is 15% off. So for the next 2 weeks, the apforlibertyshop.com website has all of our 4th of July stuff discounted by 15%. So see my lovely, beautiful, smoking hot, redheaded libertarian wife there holding up. Those are the men's shoes. 15% off. All of the 4th of July collection is 15% off for the next couple of weeks. See, it even comes with the awesome AP branding on there. So, and it comes with the AP logo in there. So we've got them all the way. Somebody wanted a size 14. Unfortunately, I do not have size 14. I feel bad about that. Well, we did, those are the men's, and we do have ladies shoes as well. Not only do we have like the typical ladies patriotic shoes that are the sneaker versions, but I also made some slip-on canvas shoes as well. So if you want to get a pair of the canvas shoes, again, those are also 15% off. So visit apforlibertyshop.com, and that's it. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to talk to me about before we go? Because we're already over time. Hope that I got your Monday started off to a good start. If you liked the program this morning and you're saying to yourself, hey, how can I support the show? I don't necessarily want to buy any merchandise, but I would like to do something for free. Well, just click that like button before you leave. That'd be great. It's nice to see so many names and faces joining us on the regs, especially all the new names and faces. I get excited every time I see a new commenter over on Rumble or on YouTube or any of the other channels that we're streaming on in the morning. People like Dash, John Knox joining us over there, AL Wild joining us this morning, a bunch of new people, LDub78 who gave us a really awesome tip last week. I won't forget that, LDub. I appreciate that. JP is joining us as well as as well as our regulars. I guess we'll call Cheeky Mare a regular now. Like Chris Morrill is joining us, Jared Pierce, Doug H, Caleb Vanderfeltz, Katie556. The end is very effing nigh. Katie556, and then a whole bunch of our friends as well. European Tim Beater and others over on Rumble. I gotta run. We'll see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.